There is a moment, almost every spring, when a man walks out onto his back porch with a cup of coffee, and the birds at his feet lift away in a single sheet of wings. He does not remember doing anything cruel. He has filled the feeder all winter. He has watered the garden through August, and yet the cardinals retreat to the holly. The chickadees stop their calls mid-note. The blue jay on the fence post fixes him with a single black eye and does not look away. It is easy to assume the birds are simply skittish, that they flee anything taller than themselves. But the truth is stranger and more specific. The birds in the yard are not reacting to size, they are reacting to a face. They have looked at this face before. They have remembered it, and in some species, they have told the other birds. Welcome back to Backyard Bird Mind. If you find this kind of revelation worth your time, take a second to subscribe before we continue. The next 10 minutes will show you something happening in your own yard that most people will live their entire lives without noticing. The final discovery is the most unsettling of all. Number 1. The experiment that proved birds remember human faces. In 2006, a wildlife biologist at the University of Washington named John Marsloff did something that on paper sounds absurd. He put on a rubber caveman mask, walked onto the Seattle campus, and trapped 7 American crows. He banded them, recorded their scolding, and released them. Then he hung the mask in a closet for months. When he or his students later walked through the same area wearing that mask, the crows screamed. They dive-bombed. They followed. When a different person wore the same mask, the crows still attacked. When the same person walked the same path wearing a different mask, the crows ignored him entirely. The face, not the person, was the threat. Marsloff's team, publishing in the journal Animal Behavior and later in Proceedings of the Royal Society B, found that the recognition lasted for more than 5 years. Crows that had never been trapped, juveniles that were not even hatched at the time of the original event, learned the dangerous face from their parents and from the flock. The grudge was inherited. This is the American crow, Corvus brachyrhynchos, the same black bird walking across the lawn at the corner of your street. It has a brain that weighs only about 9 grams, but that brain, relative to body size, sits in the same cognitive league as a chimpanzee. Cornell Lab of Ornithology classifies the corvids, the family that includes crows, jays, and ravens, as among the most cognitively complex birds on Earth. And the crow on your fence has almost certainly already decided whether your face is safe. But crows are only the beginning, because the recognition is not limited to the family that built its reputation on intelligence. Number 2. The smaller birds at your feeder are watching too. In 2011, researchers at the University of Florence, led by ornithologist Ernesto Trolliot and colleagues working with European magpies and later confirmed in North American species, found that mockingbirds nesting on a university campus could distinguish a single graduate student who had briefly touched their nest from thousands of other people walking the same path every day. The birds attacked that one student. They ignored everyone else. The northern mockingbird, Mimus polyglottos, has a brain roughly the size of a peanut. It defends its nest against a creature roughly 20,000 times its mass, and it does so selectively, with surgical memory. The black-capped chickadee, Poecile atricapillus, weighs about 11 grams, roughly the weight of 2 pennies in your palm. It is the small gray and white bird at your suet feeder, the one with the black cap and bib that calls its own name. Donald Kreutzma, the Dean of Birdsong Research in North America, has documented that the chickadee's familiar chickadee call is not a single sound, but a language. The number of D notes at the end encodes the size and threat level of a predator. 2 Ds might mean a distant hawk. 8 or 9 Ds mean a small, agile predator close by, the kind that can catch a chickadee. A pygmy owl gets more Ds than a great horned owl, because the pygmy owl is the real danger. And here is what Cornell Lab researchers have observed at feeding stations across the northern United States. When a chickadee gives that high D alarm, every other small bird in earshot, including titmice, nuthatches, kinglets, and warblers, responds as if the chickadee were their own kin. The chickadee is the neighborhood watch, and the chickadee knows your face. A study published in the journal Ethology in 2019 found that chickadees in suburban yards approached feeders more cautiously when an unfamiliar human stood at the window than when the resident homeowner did. The difference was measured in seconds of hesitation. Small numbers, but consistent, repeatable. The bird knew the difference between you and a stranger. The blue jay, Cyanocida cristata, the loud blue and white bird that descends on peanuts and dominates the feeder, is a corvid like the crow. It has the same architecture in its brain, the same dense forebrain region called the nidopallium caudolaterale that functions. In birds, the way the prefrontal cortex functions in mammals. Bernd Heinrich, who spent decades studying ravens in the forests of Maine, has written that corvids do not merely recognize individuals, they form opinions about them. The blue jay on your fence has an opinion about you. And then there is the species you would least expect. Number 3, the bird that tests you. The American robin, Turdus migratorius, the orange-breasted bird pulling worms from the lawn in spring, does not look like a creature with deep social cognition. It looks like a thrush doing what thrushes do. But in a 2012 study published in the journal Behavioral Ecology, researchers found that robins nesting in suburban yards adjusted their flight initiation distance, the distance at which they flee, an approaching human, based on the individual person. The same robin would let the homeowner approach within 4 feet. The same robin would flush from a stranger at 12 feet or more. The difference, again, was the face. The robin had learned which human walked the same path every morning without ever harming it. The robin had not learned to trust humans. The robin had learned to trust one human. This is why the cardinal in your yard appears to know you. The northern cardinal, Cardinalis cardinalis, is a non-migratory bird. It will live its entire 7 to 1 5-year lifespan, according to United States Geological Survey bird banding lab records of the oldest banded wild cardinal at 15 years, 9 months, in an area no larger than a few suburban blocks. The cardinal that visits your feeder this morning is, statistically, the same cardinal that visited last winter and the winter before. It has watched you fill the feeder hundreds of times. It has watched you walk to the mailbox thousands of times. It has, in the only way a bird can, gotten to know you. The Carolina wren, Thryothoris ludovicianus, the small brown bird with the upright tail and the impossibly loud song, is even more sedentary. A Carolina wren may spend its entire life within a territory of less than 2 acres. Every face that enters that territory enters a memory. And what most people do not realize is that this memory is not passive. The birds are not simply storing your image, they are evaluating you. They are deciding, every day, whether you have done anything new. But the strangest piece of all this is not what one bird remembers. It is what an entire neighborhood of birds shares. Number 4, the network. When Marsluff's masked researchers walked across the Seattle campus, the original 7 trapped crows scolded them. That much was expected. What was not expected was that within weeks, crows that had never been trapped, crows from adjacent territories, crows that had only watched from a distance, began scolding the same mask. Within a few years, more than half of all crows in a half-mile radius would attack the mask on sight. Even though only 7 had ever experienced the trapping directly, information had moved through the flock. The bad face had become public knowledge. Cornell Lab of Ornithology, through its long-running Project Feeder Watch citizen science program, has accumulated more than 3 decades of observations from backyard feeders across North America. One of the most consistent patterns in that data is that mixed species winter flocks, the small wandering bands of chickadees, titmice, nuthatches, and downy woodpeckers that drift through suburban yards from November through March, share alarm information across species lines. A chickadee sees the threat. A titmouse hears the call. A white-breasted nuthatch, Sitta carolinensis, the small blue-gray bird that walks headfirst down the trunk of your oak tree, freezes against the bark and goes silent. If your face has been categorized as dangerous by one species, it does not stay confined to that species. The information leaks. The tufted titmouse, Baeolophus bicolor, has been documented eavesdropping on chickadee alarm calls and responding with appropriate caution, even when no titmouse has personally witnessed the threat. Jennifer Ackerman, in her book The Birdway, describes this as an interspecies information economy, a constantly updated map of who in the neighborhood, human or animal, is to be feared. This is what you are looking at when you see the yard go still. It is not a single bird's caution. It is a verdict. A consensus has been reached, and in that consensus, you have been weighed. For most homeowners, the verdict is favorable. The cardinal returns. The chickadee descends. The robin keeps pulling worms 10 feet from your boots. But for the person who once shooed a fledgling with a broom or knocked down a nest, stood too long near a brood, the verdict is different, and the verdict persists. And then there is the last revelation, the one that ornithologists themselves are still working to fully explain. Number 5. The birds know what you intend. In a 2019 paper in the journal Animal Cognition, researchers working with American crows in urban settings found that the birds did not merely distinguish dangerous faces from safe ones, they distinguished postures. A person walking past a roost while looking at the ground was tolerated. The same person, walking the same path while looking up at the roost, was scolded. The crows were reading gaze. This is a cognitive ability that, until recently, was considered the province of primates, certain dogs, and human infants. The capacity to recognize that another creature's eyes are pointed at something, and that this pointing means attention, and that this attention may indicate intent. The crow on the telephone wire knows when you are looking at it. It knows when you have stopped looking, and it adjusts. Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center researchers have noted similar behaviors in common grackles, Quisculus quiscula, the long-tailed iridescent black birds that swarm feeders in noisy flocks. A grackle on the ground will continue feeding while a human walks past. The moment the human's head turns toward the flock, every bird in it will lift in unison, even those who could not possibly have seen the head turn directly. They were watching the watchers. The lookouts had a name, and the mourning dove, Zenaida macrora, the soft gray bird whose call drifts across summer mornings, the bird most people consider the dullest at the feeder, has been shown in Project Nestwatch data to abandon nests at a measurably higher rate when human observers approach with cameras at eye level than when the same observers approach with cameras at hip level. The dove knows the difference between a glance and a stare. This is not a metaphor. This is not anthropomorphism. This is the documented cognitive reality of the birds in your yard. They are not background. They are not decoration. They are watching, and they are deciding, and they are remembering, and they are telling each other. So when the man on the back porch walks out with his coffee, and the birds lift away in a single sheet, he is not seeing skittishness. He is seeing the result of 1,000 quiet evaluations made over 1,000 quiet mornings. He is seeing a verdict. If the cardinals return to the feeder within a minute, he has been judged kindly. If the blue jay screams from the oak, something in his face, or his stride, the angle of his gaze, has tripped a memory the bird has carried for years. The yard he thought he owned has, in fact, been observed and catalogued and discussed in a language he cannot hear, by minds whose intelligence he has spent his whole life underestimating. The holly bush at the corner of the porch holds a single cardinal, watching him through the leaves. The chickadee, 11 grams of feathers and memory, is in the dogwood, counting the Ds it might need. The crow on the wire above the driveway has not blinked. They are not afraid of him. They have simply decided what he is. And tomorrow morning, when he steps onto the porch again, they will decide again. Tell me in the comments, has there ever been a bird in your yard that seemed to recognize you personally? A cardinal that came when you called, a crow that brought you something, a jay that screamed only at one neighbor and not at you? I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one. Before you go, stay with me for a few more minutes. The story of how we learned all this is almost as strange as the science itself, and it deserves to be told properly. The breakthrough study, the one that cracked this whole question open, happened in 2006 at the University of Washington. A wildlife biologist named John Marsloff was trying to band crows for a long-term population study, and he kept running into a problem. The crows he had already caught would scream at him the moment he stepped outside, even weeks later, even when he changed his clothes, even when he walked a different route across campus. His graduate students started getting dive-bombed. People who had never touched a crow in their lives were being mobbed simply because they walked near Marsloff's lab. So he designed an experiment that has since become legendary. He had researchers wear rubber masks, one a caveman mask, the other a Dick Cheney mask, and only the caveman mask was worn during trapping. 7 crows were captured, banded, and released. Then, for years afterward, anyone who walked through that part of campus wearing the caveman mask was scolded, mobbed, and followed. The Dick Cheney mask drew no reaction at all. 5 years later, the scolding response had actually spread. More than half the crows in the area, many of them too young to have witnessed the original trapping, screamed at the caveman face the moment it appeared. The knowledge had moved through the population like a rumor passed down through generations. Marsloff later scanned crow brains using radioactive glucose tracers, and what he found was extraordinary. When a crow looked at a threatening human face, the same regions activated that light up in a human brain during fear. Memory consolidation, the amygdala, the hippocampus, the thalamus. The architecture is different, the wiring is different, but the function, the recognition of a dangerous individual, and the binding of that face to fear, is essentially the same process unfolding in essentially the same way. This matters because it changes the stakes of how we live alongside birds. A pigeon you chase off your balcony in March will remember your face in October. A magpie you throw a rock at will teach its fledglings, the following spring, that your specific silhouette is not to be trusted. There are accounts from Vancouver of crow families that have harassed individual mail carriers for upwards of 7 years. refusing to let the grudge die even after the original offense was a single startled swat at a low-flying bird. And it cuts the other way, too. A woman in Seattle named Caveman became internationally known after the crows in her yard began bringing her gifts. Earrings, buttons, a heart-shaped piece of metal, a screw, a pearl-colored bead. She had fed them peanuts every day, consistently, gently, for 4 years. The crows had decided what she was, and what she was, in their estimation, was family. They paid her in shining things because, in the economy of a corvid mind, that is what a friend deserves.